Good afternoon, what thank you for watching. This is day 5 of reading Propaganda by Edward Bernays, and I'm going to try to get 3 more sessions in so that I can make up. I just I did 3, so that's 1 for the missed Saturday, and then let's see, I'm going to try to get in today an extra one, so then it'll make up for Saturday for me spending time with my family, which is more important than reading to you guys. But also, since I was wearing makeup and my skin is super sensitive, you're gonna see remnants of it here. I'm not gonna try and kill myself just to get that off and have more of an allergic reaction, right? Just to look pretty, makeup free, whatever, for you. So just kind of get over it, right? Anyway, when the interval between the intellectual classes, and I had to actually say that because people will come over on here and be like saying whatever they want, talking out the side of their neck. You know, it just is what it is, right? Real life. When the interval between, this is in quotes, when the interval between the intellectual classes and the practical classes is too great, says the historian Buckle, the former will possess no influence, the latter will reap no benefits, end quote. Propaganda bridges this interval in our modern complex civilization. Only through the wise use of propaganda will our government, considered as the continuous administrative organ of the people, be able to maintain that intimate relationship with the public, which is necessary in a democracy. As David Lawrence, Lawrence, my daddy's name, Lawrence that is, pointed out in a recent speech, there is need for an intelligent interpretive bureau for our government in Washington. There is, it is true, a division of current information in the Department of State, which at first was headed by a trained newspaperman. But later, this position began to be filled by men from the diplomatic service, men who had very little knowledge of the public. While some of these diplomats have done well, very well, Mr. Lawrence asserted that in the long run, the country would be benefited if the functions of this office were in the hands of a different type of person. There should, I believe, be an Assistant Secretary of State who is familiar with the problem of dispensing information to press someone upon whom the Secretary of State can call for consultation, and who has sufficient authority to persuade the Secretary of State to make public that which for insufficient reason is suppressed. But you know, people keep, usually they keep people who are like, that they can totally trust, right? For like many years. I remember Megyn Kelly was given an interview with Seth Ryan, I believe his name is. Anyways, you gotta check out that interview. It's like 3 hours long, and I might be halfway through, but I don't know. Anyway, my point is she said in there that her team is the same team that for like, I don't know, ever since she's been doing it. I want to say 15 or 17 years or whatever it is. I can't remember the numbers, but you got to keep them, right? People in office, they don't keep them. And then unsuccessful people also don't keep them. And you can see it in celebrities too, because they'll be like wearing some crazy stuff or doing some crazy things. And you're just like, you got to get rid of your yes men, because like, it's just not working out in your best interest, right? So anyway, the function of the propagandist is much broader in scope than that of a mere dispenser of information to the press. The United States government should create a Secretary of Public Relations as members of the President's cabinet. The function of this official should be correctly to interpret America's aims and ideals throughout the world, and to keep the citizens of this country in touch with governmental activities and the reasons which prompt them. He would, in short, interpret the people to the government and the government to the people, ideally, right? Such an official would be neither a propagandist nor a press agent in the ordinary understanding of those terms. He would be rather a trained technician who would be helpful in analyzing public thought and public trends in order to keep the government informed about the public, and the people informed about the government. America's relations with South America and with Europe would be greatly improved under such circumstances. Ours must be a leadership democracy administered by the intelligent minority who know how to regiment and guide the masses. And is this government by propaganda? Call it, if you prefer, government by education. But education in the academic sense of the word is not sufficient. It must be enlightened, expert propaganda through the creation of circumstances, through the high spotting of significant events, and the dramatization of important issues. The statesmen of the future will thus be enabled to focus the public mind on crucial points of policy and regiment a vast, heterogeneous or genus mass of voters to clear understanding and intelligent action. I just wish people would just vote logically, and I wish that politicians would actually lead logically. Chapter 7, Women's Activities and Propaganda. Women in contemporary America have achieved a legal equality with men. This does not mean that their activities are identical with those of men. Please, please be good. Women in the mass still have special interests and activities in addition to their economic pursuits and vocational interests. Women's most obvious influence is exerted when they are organized and armed with a weapon of propaganda. So organized and armed, they have made their influence felt on city councils, state legislatures, and national congresses, upon executives, upon political campaigns, and upon public opinion generally, both local and national. In politics, the American women today occupy a much more important position from the standpoint of their influence in their organized groups than from the standpoint of leadership they have acquired in actual political positions or in actual office holden. The professional woman politician has had, up to the present, not much influence, nor do women generally regard her as being the most important element in question. Ma Ferguson, Ferguson, after all, and Ma is spelled M-A, after all, was simply a woman in the home, a cat's paw, C-A-T-S-P-A-W, for a deposed husband, Nellie, Nellie Ross, R-O-S-S, the former governor of Wyoming, is from all accounts hardly a leader of statesmanship or public opinion. If the suffrage campaign did nothing more, it showed the possibilities of propaganda to achieve certain ends. This propaganda today is being utilized by women to achieve their programs in Washington and in the states. In Washington, they are organized as a legislative committee of 14 women's organizations, including the League of Women's Voters, the Young Women's Christian Association, the Women's Christian Temperance Union, the Federation of Women's Clubs, etc. Remember, this is 1928. These organizations map out a legislative program and then use the modern technique of propaganda to make this legislative program actually pass into the law of the land. Their accomplishments in the field are various. They can justifiably take the credit for much welfare legislation. The 8-hour day for women is theirs. The 8-hour day for women is theirs. Undoubtedly, prohibition and its enforcement are theirs, if they can be considered an accomplishment. So is the Shepard-Towner bill, which stipulates support by the central government of maternity welfare in the state governments. This bill could not have passed had it not been for the political prescience, Prescience, and oh my God, why are they using these words? Sagacity, S-A-G-A-C-I-T-Y, of women like Mrs. Vanderlip, V-A-N-D-E-R-L-I-P, and Mrs. Mitchell, M-I-T-C-H-E-L-L. The federal measures endorsed at the first convention of the National League of Women Voters typify social welfare activities of women's organizations. These covered such broad interests as child welfare, education, the home and high prices, women in gainful occupations, public health and morals, independent citizenship for married women, and others. To propagandize these principles, I was trying to fight back a sneeze, sorry. The National League of Women Voters has published all types of literature such as bulletins, calendars, election information, has held a correspondence course on government, and conducted demonstration classes and citizenship schools. Possibly the effectiveness of women's organizations in American politics today is due to two things. First, the training of a professional class of executive secretaries or legislative secretaries during the suffrage campaigns, where every device known to the propagandists had to be used to regiment a recalcitrant, R-E-C-A-L-C-I-T-R-A-N-T, majority. Secondly, the routing over into peacetime activities of the many prominent women who were in the suffrage campaigns and who also devoted themselves to the important drives and mass influence movements during the war. Such women as Mrs. Frank Vanderlip, Alice Ames Winter, A-M-E-S-W-I-N-T-E-R, it's 3 names, Mrs. Henry Moskowitz, Moskowitz, Mrs. Florence Kelly, Kelley, Mrs. John Blair, Johnblair, Mrs. O.H.P. Belmont, Belmont, Doris Stevens, Stevens, Alice Paul, 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 come to mind. If I have seemed to concentrate on the accomplishments of women in politics, it is because they afford a particularly striking example of intelligent use of the new propaganda to secure attention and acceptance of minority ideas. It is perhaps curiously appropriate that the latest recruits to the political arena should recognize and make use of the newest weapons of persuasion to offset any lack of experience with what is somewhat euphemistically termed practical politics. As an example of this new technique, some years ago, the Consumers Committee of Women Fighting the quote-unquote American Valuation Tariff, valuation, end quote, tariff, rented an empty store on 57th Street in New York and set up an exhibit of merchandise tagging each item with the current price and the price it would cost if the tariff went through. Hundreds of visitors to this shop rallied to the cause of the committee. But there are also non-political fields in which women can make and have made their influence felt for social ends, and in which they have utilized the principle of group leadership in attaining the desired objectives. In the General Federation of Women's Clubs, there are 13,000 clubs. Broadly classified, they include civic and civil clubs, mothers and homemakers clubs, cultural clubs devoted to art, music or literature, business and professional women's clubs, and general women's clubs, which may embrace either civic or community phases or combine some of the other activities listed. The Women's Club is generally effective on behalf of health education and furthering appreciation of the fine arts and sponsoring legislation that affects the welfare of women and children, and playground development and park improvement, and raising standards of social or political morality, and homemaking and home economics education, and the like. In these fields, the Women's Club concerns itself with efforts that are not ordinarily covered by existing agencies and often both initiates and helps to further movements for the good of the community. A club interested principally in homemaking and the practical arts can sponsor a cooking school for young brides and others. An example of the keen interest of women in this field of education is the cooking school recently conducted by the New York Herald Tribune, which held its classes in Carnegie Hall, seating almost 3,000 persons. And you know what? I wonder if that's what they were talking about, bringing back RFK Jr., like cooking classes. I think him and Dr. Oz were talking about that, to get people to actually start cooking from scratch and get off the processed food and stuff, because people have seemed to have lost those skills. And that's why there's such like a high demand for like YouTube channels and other things, teaching people how to cook from scratch and on a budget too, you know. For the several days of the cooking school, the hall was filled to capacity, rivaling the drawing power of a McCormack, McCormack, or a Paderewski, Paderewski, and refuting most dramatically the idea that women in large cities are not interested in housewifery. Well, that's crazy. A moment for the serving of milk in public schools, or the establishment of a baby health station at the Department of Health, will be an effort close to the heart of a club devoted to the interest of mothers and child welfare. A music club can broaden its sphere and be of service to community by cooperating with a local radio station and arranging better musical programs. Fighting bad music can be as militant a campaign and martial as varied resources as any political battle. And that just reminds me that I forgot before our son's nap to have him do his music lesson. Anyway, we're all doing it, by the way, and you should too. I can't remember the name of the music app, but it's like Simply Piano or something like that. Get you a cheap keyboard, get on that app, dude, and do it to it. It's actually really fun, and it helps your brain. An art club can be active in securing loan exhibitions for its city, and no, I'm not sponsored by them or anything. It can also arrange traveling exhibits of the artwork of its members or show the artwork of its schools or universities. And I'm not sponsored by anybody, by the way. I just tell you what works for us and what we're into at the time or whatever. A literary club may step out of its charmed circle of lectures and literary lions and take a definite part in the educational life of the community. It can sponsor, for instance, a competition in the public schools for the best essay on the history of the city or on the life of its most famous son, over and above the particular object for which the women's club may have been constituted. Jeepers. It commonly stands ready to initiate or help any movement which has for its object a distinct public good in the community. More important, it constitutes an organized channel through which women can make themselves felt as a definite part of public opinion. Just as women supplement men in private life, so they will supplement men in public life by concentrating their organized efforts on those objects which men are likely to ignore. There is a tremendous field for women as active protagonists of new ideas and new methods of political and social housekeeping. When organized and conscious of their power to influence their surroundings, women can use their newly acquired freedom in a great many ways to mold the world into a better place to live in. Yeah, when it's done in a proper way, they absolutely can. Women are very, very powerful. Their vote is very powerful also. But anyway, on that Simply Piano thing or whatever it's called, they also have like guitar and like other things that you can do, which we will be looking into that at a later date. Chapter 8, Propaganda for Education. Education is not securing its proper share of public interest. The public school system materially and financially is being adequately supported. There is marked eagerness for a college education and a vague aspiration for culture expressed in innumerable courses and lectures. The public is not cognizant of the real value of education and does not realize that education as a social force is not receiving the kind of attention it has the right to expect in a democracy. It is felt, for example, that education is entitled to more space in the newspapers. That well-informed discussion of education hardly exists. That unless such an issue as the Gary school system is created, or outside of an occasional discussion, such as that aroused over Harvard's decision to establish a school of business, education does not attract the active interest of the public, but it literally should. Anyway, like we are literally, like we spend the most on education as a country, and we're like not the dumbest, but you'd think we'd be the smartest, and we ain't the smartest as a country. You know what I'm saying? Look up the numbers. It's staggering, mind-blowing. There are a number of reasons for this condition. First of all, there's the fact that the educator has been trained to stimulate to thought the individual students in his classroom. It says to stimulate to thought. Weird. First of all, there is the fact that the educator has been trained to stimulate to thought the individual students in his classroom. Okay, that's really weird. But has not been trained as an educator at large of the public. In a democracy, an educator should, in addition to his academic duties, bear definite and wholesome relation to the general public. This public does not come within the immediate scope of the academic duties, but in a sense he depends upon it for his living, for the moral support and the general cultural tone upon which his work must be based. In the field of education, we find what we have found in politics and other fields. The evolution of the practitioner of the profession has not kept pace with the social evolution around him, and it is out of gear with the instruments for the dissemination of ideas which modern society has developed. If this be true, then the training of the educators, in this respect should begin in the normal schools, with the addition to their curricula of whatever is necessary to broaden their viewpoint. The public cannot understand unless the teacher understands the relationship between the general public and the academic idea. The normal school should provide for the training of the educator to make him realize that his is a twofold job: education as a teacher and education as a propagandist. A second reason for the present remoteness of education from the thoughts and interests of the public is to be found in the mental attitude of the pedagogue, pedagogue, whether a primary school teacher or college professor, toward the world outside the school. This is a difficult psychological problem. The teacher finds himself in a world in which the emphasis is put on those objective goals and those objective attainments which are prized by our American society. He himself is but moderately or poorly paid. Till we meet again, love you, mean it.